13 minutes before 7 o'clock, let's continue with the development coming from Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's Zanu-PF youth said they are prepared to die in defense of President Robert Mugabe's government. This comes a day after military threatened to intervene if President Robert Mugabe does not rein in his warring Zanu-PF lieutenants.
We must remind those behind the current treacherous shenanigans that when it comes to matters of protecting our revolution, the military will not hesitate to step in.
Zimbabwe's Defense Force Commander General Constantino Chiwenga sending a strong message, but this did not sit well with some in the ruling party. Zanu-PF Youth League leader Kudzai Chipanga says the army is selectively reading the country's constitution and should be confined to the barracks. He says they will not sit and fold hands while threats are made against a legitimately elected government led by President Robert Mugabe.
It is our country and our future at stake, and we will not let an individual military man interfere with the leader of the party and legitimately voted president of the country, Comrade R.G. Mugabe. All those in security sector fatigues who wish to engage in politics are free to throw their heads in the ring and not hide behind the barrel of a gun.
The Human Rights Watch has condemned the statement by the commander of the Defense Force.
Human Rights Watch is concerned with the partisan and highly politicized statements coming from the Army General. We believe that the Army should confine itself in the barracks and have no business in the political and electoral affairs of Zimbabwe.
Others believe the Army has a right to intervene.
When Mugabe lost the first round of the presidential election in March 2008 against Morgan Tsvangirai, the military went on a full public in military uniform campaign to restore Mugabe to power. So Mugabe cannot have his cake and eat it.
It's also an indicator of President's frustration in the open meddling, whereas the military could control things from the background. Right now it is now very clear that they are also rallying behind a certain candidate whom they think and whom they want should succeed Mugabe.
Meanwhile, the ANC has refused to be drawn into the matter.
The issue is a chief of the army in Zimbabwe make a certain statement. The government in Zimbabwe must deal with that matter, not the ANC in South Africa. Zanu-PF must deal with that issue because Zimbabwe is not our colony.
As the standoff continues, President Robert Mugabe is still mum.
All right, and for the latest on the situation in Zimbabwe, we joined now live in our studios in Johannesburg by our Foreign Editor Sophie Mokoena. Also, Sophie, good morning to you and thank you so much for coming through. Thank you so much. What can we confirm at this point of time? Because there are reports coming through. Apparently, there was also a gunfire that erupted near President Mugabe's private residence.
Apparently, indeed, there was a sporadic gunfire early hours of this morning. But it's not clear whether it was around President Mugabe's residence or just in the streets. You'd recall that yesterday we got reports that some military vehicle are driving towards Harare, and indeed we saw pictures of trucks. And I can confirm also that our correspondent, Efet Musekua, who is based in Zimbabwe, I requested him to take a drive around yesterday to look. Indeed, there was a convoy he saw, but he couldn't follow that convoy. And later he was told that the convoy was on its way to the camps, the military camps. So from yesterday, something was brewing. And last night, then there was a statement from the Zanu-PF issued by the Minister of Information in Zimbabwe, S.K. Moyo, condemning the statement by the commander of the Defense Force that was issued during the press briefing on Monday, where he warned against a purging of some of the senior veterans of Zanu-PF, and one immediately realized that he was referring to Emmerson Mnangagwa, who was expelled by President Robert Mugabe, because Emmerson Mnangagwa is one of the veterans of the Zanu-PF, a man who participated in the liberation of Zimbabwe. Clearly, the division within the party is now spilling over to government. And then last night, we then also heard that the army is moving around, but it was not clear whether it's the army, a group perhaps in defense of President Mugabe or in support of Zanu or of Emmerson Mnangagwa. What is of importance is that people must realize that indeed the army is busy, but it's not clear whether they have completely taken over or they are trying to bring calm in Zimbabwe. And the statement this morning at 4 a.m. by one of the generals, General S.B. Moyo, indicating that people must be calm and they must avoid perhaps moving around. Secondly, calling on journalists to avoid to use social media. Clearly, that gave an indication that something is not well in Zimbabwe. And all of a sudden, the local broadcaster or the national broadcaster that didn't broadcast the statement of the commander of the Defense Force on Monday suddenly used the visuals and the sound bites of the commander on Monday back to back with this one. So clearly, the army is involved, and it looks like it's visible, either bringing calm or trying to resolve the standoff, or perhaps ensuring that they assert their authority, as they indicated on Monday, that they will not hesitate to intervene.
Because there are also reports that came through that the soldiers overran the headquarters of the SABC and ordered staff members to leave. So it certainly looks like the situation is indeed very tense.
It is very tense. It is very tense. Since Monday, like I indicated, the commander of the Defense Force issuing a statement and a media briefing, very chilling statement. And since then, it has been very tense. And even this morning, our correspondent, Effet Musekua, is on the ground, and he took a turn around town, and he did send the visuals that indicates that indeed the army is visible in Harare this morning. The streets are deserted, very few people, but army trucks here and there, and he did send those visuals that indicates that something is happening and the army is quite visible.
Yeah, and also panic, of course, erupted yesterday when armed tanks were seen harboring around Zimbabwe yesterday, of course, sparking speculations that we might see a coup taking place in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, people were saying that those are the signs of an imminent coup, and nobody has confirmed a coup thus far. The Defense Force or the army saying they are trying to bring calm and also to ensure that there's peace. But when you listen attentively to what they are saying, you get a sense that something is brewing. And later we'll play the entire speech of General S.B. Moyo that was on ZBC this morning at 4 a.m. You can imagine 4 a.m.
And what we read from the statement, really, because it was just mainly about assuring Zimbabwean citizens that all is in order, there's peace and stability in the area. But what can we read from that statement?
Trying to bring stability in a situation where there is no stability. That's all what I can say.
Do we know at this current moment also, Sophie, where Mnangagwa is? Because one would think that the situation currently taking place in Zimbabwe is as a result of his, for the fact that he was fired.
Last time I checked, I was in constant communication with people close to Mnangagwa. He was in South Africa, truth be told, but I can't guarantee now that he is still in South Africa. I also got information that there were attempts to persuade the former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, to try and intervene between Mnangagwa and Mugabe. Unfortunately, Mbeki is out of the country. He is in Sweden, apparently is arriving today. I'm not so sure whether the message has been communicated to him, and I'm not surprised. You'd recall at some point in time, President Mbeki visited Zimbabwe, where he met President Robert Mugabe, and we were told that he also attended a cabinet meeting, and also he had a meeting with President Mugabe and the army. And the meeting, the content of the meeting or what was discussed was not divulged. I think it was 3 months ago. So clearly something was brewing, and I am not surprised that there are unconfirmed reports that there's an attempt to bring in Thabo Mbeki to mediate between Mnangagwa and Mugabe. You know, Mugabe respects Mbeki and particularly the Zanu-PF leadership. But we are trying to get confirmation from Mbeki's office. He's out of the country, he's in Sweden, and perhaps when he is back, we'll get a clear indication whether he has been informed. But what surprised in South Africa is still mum. You know that President Jacob Zuma is currently the chair of SADC. and South Africa, perhaps very soon, they will give an indication to allay fears in the region, because currently there's tension in the region, because if Zimbabwe experiences serious instability, countries around that country, you know, the neighbors are going to suffer. President Zuma is going to Botswana. We are hoping that perhaps in Botswana, his discussion with Ian Khama during the media briefing, our team, Mzwandile Mbeche, they will be able to ask a question or two about the situation.
All right, Sophie, we'll have to leave it at that. We've seen the UK and the US issuing warnings that it's not safe to travel to Zimbabwe, so I believe it's not safe at all. Just a quick one.
Yes, indeed, UK and US has issued a travel warning to its citizens that it's not safe to go to Zimbabwe. We'll be checking with SAA whether indeed the flights to Zimbabwe are, you know, they will continue.
All right. Sophie, thank you so much for coming through. SABC Foreign Editor Sophie Mokoena updating us on the latest situation from Zimbabwe. Let's take an air break.